right. Well, welcome back to Sunday's Coming Podcast.
Hello.
We are here again. As always, I'm here with Kaleb, and today we are very excited to have Aubrey Wentz joining us on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
So glad to be here. It's been great.
It's going to be a good convo.
Yeah, it is. I'm very happy you're here.
Yeah.
We've spent lots of fun time together when we were, well, at least when I was on the Philo core team.
Totally.
It hasn't been
time.
as much fun since you.
It really hasn't, because I
let's
just
be
don't
honest.
see all the fun things like I used to.
I'm rocking my
I
Philo
noticed
mug.
your Philo Ember mug.
If people
Very
watch
good.
this podcast on YouTube, they see that I always have my Philo
love
mug.
that.
It's pretty great.
Yeah, I use my Philo Yeti every day for coffee.
It's good. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Todd.
Todd.
They were fun
Thank you,
little
Mr.
gifts.
Philo.
Like I was on the team when we were doing those for, I think it was for breakout teachers, something like that. I was like, what is this wizardry of a coffee cup that keeps my coffee warm? It doesn't work. It doesn't work as well.
I'll be honest. I've had this now so long, the battery kind of can't keep up as well. So it's not quite as good, but it's still a cool mug. I keep it.
Gifts for things like that need to be like the odd gifts that are expensive enough that I would never buy for myself.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, like, I would never buy this for myself for, I don't know, $80 or whatever it
But
is.
it also has to be universal enough that everyone will like it.
Exactly.
It's very tricky.
Right.
That's very
like
true.
one year, the core team got gift cards to Aubreys. That was our Christmas present.
Oh, yeah.
Which I would never
I know.
have spent that much
Yeah,
money on a
I know.
pair of shoes. I mean, I grew up on Payless. For those who are old enough to remember what Payless was.
Yep.
But I have my Allbirds on today, my flats. I wear them. I like can stand a whole day at an event and my feet don't hurt.
Nice.
They are my...
I really sound like an old woman when I say that, but
I
it's
know.
so true.
So the thing that I don't fully understand about like fabrics is that wool, like it sounds very hot and sweaty, right? It's not.
It's wonderful.
And it's like moisture wicking. That's why you go to like REI and you're like, oh, got to buy some wool underwear. And you're like, why would I do that? So they don't stink, I guess, when you're camping for 5 days.
Didn't even know it was a thing.
But my feet tend to sweat, for anybody that cares.
We're glad to know that information.
Yeah. And my Allbirds, they don't sweat.
Isn't it? It's magic. They are magic shoes.
I love wearing them when I travel because they just, my feet just don't sweat. So anyways, buy some Allbirds. They're really fun.
Well, for the audience, let's kind of circle back around. We just spent a while talking about Philo, and you know, people may or may not know what Philo is. They may or may not know what your involvement with Philo is.
Totally.
So let's start with sort of like, who is Aubrey?
Who am I?
What are the different areas that you work in, serve in, contribute in, communities you're a part of?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how far back you want me to go. Like, I was
it's really your call.
born and
However far back you want to go.
I mean, I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I was a theater kid, but not. I like caught the bug late in high school, and then like went crazy with it in college. Lived in New York City for a little bit.
That's fun.
Yeah.
So were you doing what?
I
were
went
you
to a
doing
theater
in
school
Okay.
in New York,
Okay.
like a 2-year
Gotcha.
certificate program that I did not complete because then I moved back to Chicago
Okay.
and finished my degree at North Park University in Chicago, actually. And then I stepped on staff at Willow right as I graduated and was there for 18 years.
It's a very long time.
It was a very long time. Saw a lot, went through a lot, met my husband there though. And like, we laugh. Like, I feel like now that I'm not on staff there anymore too, I can sit like, I've gotten a kick out of saying like, we totally used to like sneak behind the video racks and kiss. Like 100%.
Wow.
Like he was like not, like we broke the rules. I don't even care anymore.
Oh,
I'm
that's
we
so
got
What a
free
great place to be
Yeah.
in. You're just free. It's awesome.
I like that. We did. I mean, we were young and falling in love, and yeah. Anyway, yeah, we totally snuck behind the video rack.
So what would Matt say if I gave him a hard time about that sometime with no context?
He'd probably just laugh and blush a little bit and like try to change the subject.
It's like those server racks were loud.
Yeah.
Just never mind.
I'm like, I could say
I was
so
like,
many
we could-
things that
yeah,
would
right.
definitely need to get cut from the
Right.
podcast.
Oh, that's
Yeah, we
so
try not
funny.
to edit this podcast, so we should
Okay.
probably just stop.
So
right
anyway, so then through the way I left Willow was interesting from the standpoint of for 2 years in a row, my position was eliminated due to reorg.
Okay.
And I had like just got like had my last kid and had just like gotten the job that it was like, I feel like my career has been culminating to like being the arts leader at our one campus. And that happened and then COVID hit. And well, that happened right after all the stuff with Bill Hybels went down. I hope it's okay to say that name here. And then it was like 2018, Willow exploded. 2019, I had my third kid. And then like our campus pastor left, our worship pastor. There was like mass exodus, totally understandable. People needed to do what they needed to do to care for themselves well. And it was hard at the time. And you look back at it and go, that's fair. Like, and so finally was the arts director. COVID hits. We're trying to figure out everybody's trying to figure out how to put, I feel like this is such like a phrase now. Everyone's trying to figure out how to put their church services online. We were too. And then new leadership came in, did a reorg, and there were no more director positions in arts and worship at the campuses. So I'm like, I don't have a job.
Yeah.
So they're like, but I'm like, have been this high capacity leader, like finally like kind of hitting my stride. And as far as my career went. And so I was like, what is going on, God? And they're like, well, let's find you a role on the core team. And there was like some hardness there with like applying for it and not getting it and all the things that go into that. But was like, all right, God, like if this is what you have, like I'm going to be obedient in that, and stepped onto the core team. That was hard for other reasons. And so at the end of 2020, my role was eliminated. I moved to core team. I think they call it central team now. And then at the end of 2021, they did another reorg and my role was eliminated.
Of course.
And I didn't find that out until like February of 22.
Okay.
And in November of 21, Matt had decided to leave staff. There was just a lot of the way it was structured. It was just hard. It was time. And he knew it was time. It was time for him to let go and take a risk on something new. And I remember some really good friends of ours asking me, like, what about you? Like, this has been a hard, long journey for you. Do you feel like it's time? And I just said, so much of my career, unfortunately, has been predictably painful and been about being resilient and steadfast in the middle of all of that. So if God's asking me to like sign up for another round, like, okay.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me say this to a lot of people. I'll always say, what's God's invitation to you? Because if you know that you know that you know that this is where God wants you, even when it's really hard, like you're okay. Because I know God's got something in this. Not that like God's trying to punish you. That's not what I mean by that. But like he's with me in this. I know this is even the difficult space he's invited me to. Yeah. So I said, if I'm supposed to not be on staff at Willow, I think God's going to have to like shove me. Yeah. And then it was literally like a month later. I found out my role was being eliminated again. And I was like, okay. And they did they very kindly were like, tell us what you want to do. Like, where can we find? And I was like, let's not do that this time. Let's not. If you look at the way you want to structure the team and there's an Aubrey-shaped hole, let's talk. Yeah. But if there is not, let's not pretend that there is. And it's time for me to be done. Yeah. The gift was I had a very generous severance package. So I had time to just like,
that's great.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
The day after I left staff, I broke my toe. You can't do anything with a broken toe.
That's terrible.
Nothing.
Force rust.
Precisely. And so that whole first, we had like gotten, like thinking ahead, I was like, I'm going to spend the whole summer with my kids. Like as an aside, I've never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I'm not sure what I was thinking, but I was like, we're going to get pool passes. Guess what? You can't do with a broken toe. Go in water.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, the podiatrist was like, your toenail is going to fall off, and that's really close to the bone. And if you get an infection, then we're going to have to amputate your toe. And I was like, never mind. I won't go in any bodies of water. Like quickly. No lakes, no rivers, no oceans, no pools.
That's crazy.
Like, the shower, that's it.
A really important PSA for those listening is like,
I didn't know that.
Don't
lose your toenail because you could lose your whole foot.
But I definitely didn't know that.
That's where he went. I was like, wow, that got real fast. Dang. So like, and then, I mean, you can't walk.
Yeah.
Like everything. It was my big toe. And so my sister-in-law had given me a devotional book based on your Enneagram number, and I'm an Enneagram 3, which is like the doer, achiever, like how are we going to win right now? Yeah. What's the best way? And let's do it. And if we can't find a way to win, then we'll just like opt out and do something else. Yeah. And so I was like, whoa, this was broken toe is not the way to win this summer. Yep. And through that devotional, it was like, there was literally one of the weeks that was called practicing stillness. And I was like, I had closed it and set it down. I was like, no.
Not this week.
Mm-mm. And so God just did something in me where even now, and I was reminding myself of this today, because today is a lighter day. I have a really busy, big October coming up. And I was like, oh, that's right, God. What you taught me the summer of 2022 was rest actually has to come first so that I'm ready for when it's busy.
Yeah.
I didn't live any of my life like that up until then.
Yeah.
It was like rest when you're about to burn out. And I had even like coached other people that way. Rest when you're about to burn out. Instead of like, if it's light, rest up. Yeah. That means something big's probably coming and you need to be like fueled up and ready to go for it.
That's good.
Whereas like, I think most of us, we have like extra time in our schedule, like, okay, what else should I add? Right. What else should I put in here? It's like, nothing.
Yeah.
I promise a busy season will come again.
Yeah. And not when you want it.
Right.
But hey, you could be prepared if you're not filling every space of margin, every white space up with more and more.
And I think so much of that as an Enneagram 3, like we love to be busy. I'm a 6 and I go to a 3 when I'm unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I know during seasons when I'm like constantly forcing something into my schedule or I'm trying to fill because it's taking me away from something that I'm anxious about or something I don't want to do, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's silence is very, very good for people.
And the processing through the level of guilt I felt sitting in the middle of a weekday and watching a Netflix show. So much guilt and shame.
Interesting.
That even like God had to work on me in that. And I'm so grateful I am married to the man I'm married to because like he's working his tail off. And he'd like come, we have an office down in our basement and he'd come upstairs and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching a Netflix show. He's like, way to go, babe. Relax. Yeah. He was like such a proponent of it. Yeah. And so I think it would have been a lot harder on me. I know not everybody necessarily, they might have a spouse that come and be like, really, that's all you're doing today? Yeah. There was no like, haven't you cleaned the toilet? None of that. Because he knows I hate cleaning the house. So it was not, he was very much like, what are you going to watch tomorrow? I'm like, wait, what? I needed that. Permission to actually relax. Permission to actually find things I enjoy, which like needed to be the predecessor to then me deciding to launch my own company because I actually figured out what I like to do. Because for 18 years, I had job descriptions that I always like leaked out of, like, and it would be like, that's not your job. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Like, sorry, who I am is like, which made me feel like who I am is too much. Rather than, actually, I just have more to give than this asks of me. Yeah. And that's not bad on the role or the organization. And it's not bad on me. But how do those things coexist? Or do I need to go find a new space?
Yeah.
Which is a lot of what I like to help people figure out.
Yeah. Well, I think the bigger the organization, the easier it is to write a job description that's like, hey, we're hiring for this person and don't leave this lane. Like, this is what we hired you to do. Don't go to this. Don't go to that.
Right.
But you hire the person. You don't hire just the job description that you wrote randomly or ChatGPT wrote for you. You know what I mean? And now you go, hey, we're hiring a person who has these skills.
I know.
I do. I
writes a lot of
ChatGPT
content
for everything. Yeah. So every email that anybody ever receives from me is probably written from ChatGPT. But it's easy to, have your personality, the skills that God's given you leak out because that's what God has given you. You should use that. Yes. And it's hard to be held back.
And what happens is when you hire for a job description, and I'm not calling job descriptions bad, they're necessary. But when you only hire for a job description, then when something happens to the human that inhabits that job, it's actually very hard for the organization to care for them well because all of a sudden they're not doing their job description exactly as you had hoped they would. And so I think there's a balance of, yes, we have responsibilities and we have tasks that need to get accomplished in order to have a successful organization, whether you're a church or a nonprofit or a for-profit organization. But how do you also hire for the company culture you want to create, which is about people? Because then you can care for people better.
Yeah.
And then your organization has an opportunity to grow in ways that you like never can predict. Because instead of saying, we've got this perfect plan, we've defined all the job descriptions and it's going to be exactly this, you can like use that as a guide, but also say, wow, we're seeing like this thing coming out of this person and these ideas coming here. And like, you're able to grow in the direction that you're naturally equipped to grow in versus trying to kind of force everything back into the lines.
Yeah. And I think what we tend to get stuck in the thought process of, well, if we don't have accountability to the job description and the blah, 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 then all of a sudden our people are going to be lazy and not do their jobs. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not actually about a job description. That's about the content of the character of the people that you're hiring. Correct. So how do you put a hiring process in place that actually finds out about the human you're hiring?
Yeah.
Maybe better to hire humans that will confess, like, I have a hard time putting work down. You're going to have to coach them in that to build a company culture that envelops rest into your rhythm. Yeah. But I'd rather do that than be hyper concerned about having lazy employees.
And I think too, the chances that your team rises to the responsibility you give them, if you say, hey, we trust you, we want to see what you can create in this space with more freedom. Yeah. The chances that they rise to that and actually put in a great effort is a lot higher than if you dictate the thing that they're going to do. Yeah. Okay. Is this like a HR coaching podcast, or what are we doing here?
It should be, because I just so many churches do that, and I see it all the time. And they're hiring for this thing, and it's a task oriented position, and if it's only for task, or let's say it's an admin role, I go, there's a lot of third party companies that will only provide you a person to just do tasks. If you want to just get a person to do tasks, go hire that. Don't go hire a human with a life and all of these different things that we don't act like we care about. Yeah. Because exactly what you just said, when something happens to that person in the job, now all of a sudden we're not viewing that person as something's going on in their family. They're getting a divorce. They just had another kid. They just had whatever happened.
Right.
We're looking at, they're not doing their job that I want them to do. Yeah. And unfortunately, I would think that churches would be different than other organizations in that, but often it's not, and sometimes worse. And that's very, very unfortunate. And
I see that. I mean, through doing a lot of the coaching and the cohort leading in Philo, the church is the worst culprit of that sometimes, which it grieves me. How many men and women in church production just feel totally undervalued. They clamor to Philo to get their skills built so that they can prove that they're worthy of their paycheck. Yes. But then they're being asked to pastor volunteers who are coming with huge problems that they don't know how to do that, but they're not considered pastoral staff. And it's this, and they really need development in soft skills, but they can't get development dollars it's so hard. And it comes down to because they're hiring to a job description, which is to run audio on the weekend or edit videos or whatever. And it's but there's also so much more to that. And this is a human. Yes. And in the church, this is a son or daughter of God.
Yeah.
It gets sticky.
Yeah. Man, that's, there's so much there.
Yeah.
It just makes me think so much about
this is perfect. We're going to circle back now, and we're going to hear more about what you're doing now. So you come out of that season, you went through a lot of discernment and wrestling and new seasons and breaking toes and all this stuff. And out of that, you kind of started some new ventures that actually have, a pretty broad range of things that you're involved in. Yeah. So maybe talk about how the season that you went through, those 18 years of experience in ministry, kind of led you to what you're doing now, and how you see yourself serving inside and outside of the church space.
Totally. I wouldn't have said that I came out of my ministry career feeling wounded. I'm doing a lot of processing still, but I was very clear that it was not my desire to be on a full-time church staff again, because I wanted to be able to help serve. I'm I don't think there's a role on any one church staff that puts me in a position to help actually impact what we've just been talking about caring for people differently. Yeah. And that's why I was maybe I should. I had applied for HR roles. I had talked to Willow's HR team about being a part of their team. Can I do development? Can I do this? How do we become better humans to each other? How do we show up more as our full? Anyway, so I was maybe I just want to do coaching, but then I'd really miss live events, but then I'd really miss this. And so it was on a walk with my mom, actually, on one of my days when I was just earning money, sitting around doing nothing. Yay, severance. And she goes, if you could wave a magic wand, if you just close your eyes and dream it, what would you do? I'm I'd open my own company and I'd coach people and I'd do live events, and I just named it all. And she just looked back at me and she goes, okay, maybe God's saying yes to that. And I was cool. Huh? And so the gift was at the beginning of 2023, I had the security, because especially like as a 3, there's like a thing with financial security. And so like it's like God was like, I got you. I knew that would be a barrier for you. You don't have to worry about that. You still have your severance. Like your family is okay.
Yeah.
You're okay. Play a little bit. Figure it out. Dabble. And then God just started bringing people into my life. Julie Chappell is an amazing producer. She and I overlapped a little bit at Willow. She now freelance produces, owns her own thing. And like she randomly out of nowhere, I hadn't talked to her in a decade, randomly text me, hey, I'm doing a gig with this other company, blah, blah, blah. They need a second producer. Do you want to do it with me? I heard you weren't at Willow anymore. Awesome. Yeah, actually, I'm curious about getting into this. And she mentored me. We did all the pre-work stuff, which was the stuff I didn't know. I learned a bunch of new vocabulary. Like they don't call it service orders. They call it a run a show, and usually just ROS. And I was like writing down all these like acronyms. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And learning all this stuff and getting to ask her afterwards. Getting to ask her, how do you price things? Because I want to be competitive to other people who are doing this, but also uphold the pricing of my fellow live event people so they don't look silly when they, and like it was never felt competitive. It felt very much like she mentored me, built into me, taught me how to do it. We didn't even do the event. It got canceled.
Oh my gosh.
And so I got to do all the pre-work, which
amazing.
was like the part I needed.
Yeah.
Get me in a live event room. It really doesn't matter what the event is.
Yeah.
I can do it with my eyes closed. Like that, it naturally comes out of me. It was so like got to learn that from her. Knew I wanted to start some coaching stuff. I got a certificate in diversity and inclusion from Cornell University.
Okay. That's awesome.
Because I was like, this is another thing I'm passionate about. So I just kept poking at the things I was passionate about.
Yeah.
And so like in my coaching that comes up, I don't know, God might do something more with that someday, where like I envision like having a whole wing of my business where we're like actually going into churches and doing assessments for them on how they're doing with diversity and inclusion and then coaching them to get better at it.
Awesome.
I have not spoken those words out loud in a long time, which kind of scares me that God might be doing something with that sometime soon, because that's how it's been working lately, where I literally like just start to dream out loud about the things I know God's put on my heart that I'm passionate about. And then he just kind of slowly starts to like bring the pieces in. Yeah. I have a coaching mentor that I meet with once a month. Again, she helps me like believe more in myself than I naturally would. She's like, you're worth more than that. Charge more than that. Like it should be this, or like you shouldn't be working for that client anymore. That's not aligned with what you're passionate about. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. How do I let go of a client? How do I let go of a contract and not have direct like replacement funds? Yeah. How do I monitor how much time I'm giving that I don't get compensated for, but it's things that I'm passionate about? So like, I'm still figuring all that out. When I first opened the LLC, like I was government official, had a business. Okay. Literally every other day, I was like on our couch crying. This is the stupidest decision. Why did I do this? This is like financial suicide. Like, how could I have done this? We have 3 little kids. Like, this is so stupid. And every time, and my husband's at 6, but every time he was like, this is what I just know we're going to be okay. I just know we're going to figure it out. This is what you're supposed to do. Like even as fresh as we were away just for a weekend back in June, and we're sitting out by the pool, and I looked at him, I go, babe, what am I really going to do for a job? And he's like, what you've been doing for the last year? I'm like, this is like Disney World. Like, this isn't real life. And he's like, it is though, because I just had never been in a position to give myself permission to chase after all the different things I was passionate about. I'm like, to the point that like I sing in a bar band. Yeah.
That's so cool, by the way.
Because I was like, well, I'm also like a singer, but I wasn't feeling ready to like sing in church again. Yeah. And so God was like, great, do this.
So cool.
I'm like, oh, okay.
This is more fun than church.
I mean, it's just fun. It's the fact that like music is fun because it's music and I'm a musician. Yes. And that was a journey. Yes. I remember being like 1 month off of staff and going to a Chris Tomlin concert and seeing like all the lights and how they're doing graphics. And I was like, oh, we could use that for nothing, because I don't work anywhere and I can't apply it to anything. And I had like so many of those little like crisis of identity moments that I didn't even know were there, where I had to come to a place of like, it's still valuable that I see creative things that way. Yeah. And can I just enjoy that with how God has built me and not have to apply it to something else? Yeah. And then like to get real thick, apply that to actually my relationship with Jesus. can I just be here and enjoy it for the sake of enjoying it and not have it be to produce something for a large group of people on a weekend?
Yeah.
Hadn't done that for 18 years.
Yeah.
So that's the journey God's had me on.
Well, there's somebody listening to this right now who also hasn't done that for 18 years or 12 years or 9 years or whatever it is. And I think probably resonate with that wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love, you're chasing after the things that you feel, that God's put on your heart, that you're passionate about, that you care about. I think I've said this in another podcast, Bob Goff has, I think it was his first book, Love Does, the big one that came out. And he talks about like, there was a season of me wrestling within my life. Where is God calling me? What are the things that I love to do? What are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that I want to do in my life? And do those even align with a role that is anywhere on the planet?
Right.
In realizing and begging God as an Enneagram 6 for somebody to make a decision for me. And to go, God, please open the door and just like give me the runway with the blinking lights to go this direction.
Yeah.
And that book, he talks so much about you trying to figure out your calling in your life is not just about God going, this is what I want you to do. And tells you exactly what to do. It's just going, hey, the desires that are on your heart and the skills that God's given you, the things that you're passionate about is the direction that God wants you to run.
Yeah.
And to go, hey, if you want to do that and you want to produce live events and sing in a bar band and coach leaders
people.
And you can do all of those things and it's equally glorifying God as working in a church full time or being pastoral staff or doing whatever the heck you want to do.
Yeah. And like a part of all of that, reconciling, like, how does that then relate me to like my role as a wife and a friend and a mom? I mean, I've got 3 kids in elementary school. Woof. Which when I tell people that, they'll be like, oh, I'll pray for you. And they're girls, all girls. Like, I'll pray for your husband. I'm like, pardon me, I would also like prayer. Why is it that it's easier for me because I'm a girl?
Yeah.
No, like, So like all of that being revolutionized and like just recently, part of my thinking, even when we use that word, like, what are you called? What's your calling? And I'm like, our calling is to become more like Christ. Right. Our calling is not a job description or a title or a role or even a vocation. And that got real mucky for me because people had put definitions of who I was or who I wasn't in certain things that I was passionate about. I heard things like, well, I think our congregation relates more to a male worship leader. So does that mean I'm not called to be a worship leader? Yeah. Because I'm not a male? Well, no, that's something someone put on what had been labeled as my calling. Yeah. I sat down with a good friend. This was like 6 months ago. And she goes, Aubrey, because I was like, I don't know how to reconcile. Like, I thought I was called to be in ministry. I thought I was called to be a worship pastor. I thought I was called blah, blah, blah. And I'm not doing any of that now. And she's like, does that make all those things not true? You've like put all these things on a shelf because someone else has defined them for you. What does it look like for you to take those definitions off and pull them off the shelf again and look at it as still good and how God wired you up? And it's like, oh, that's really good. Yes. You should write that down.
Yes.
Yeah. So our calling is to become like, how am I every day trying to figure out more and more? Yeah. God, who did you make me to be? And how does what I've experienced enhance that? And how does what I've experienced draw me away from that?
And I think, you releasing control in that way, of like, because I love controlling, like literally everything in my life I want to control and have it in my little bubble so I can, maintain whatever it is. And when you release it, now you're like, God, I have no idea what's going to happen. My severance runs out at blank date. That's a fact. And I have some time, but I want to figure out what I'm going to do. And could I even make money doing it? Could I do anything other than, there's a lot of things that I really enjoy that I would not make money doing in my life.
Right. Right.
And, when it comes to your career and your identity, especially when you're at the same place for 18 years, it's hard. I couldn't imagine.
That Matt and I were both at the same, I mean, Matt was there for 16 years, I think. I was there for 18. Gosh. I mean, all of our babies were there. They were even like in the daycare that was at Willow for a while. And even thinking about like, I was on stage a lot. So even like the genesis of our entire family, every pregnancy was viewed by our entire congregation. And then we left. Yeah. And so for even like, and we laugh now because like Matt travels for work some and I travel for work. And like, we'll look at each other and we're like, would you ever have thought? Because I remember we're like first newly married, we're like, oh my gosh, God put this team together. We're gonna like do ministry forever. And now we're like, whoa, we didn't have a clue what we were talking about then.
Yep.
But we are still very much a team.
Yeah.
Just doing really different work.
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, work that's so informed by what we learned at Willow, what we experienced there, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, you go.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and then, once you guys both left, you had the experience of going church shopping for the first time. I just experienced this 2 years ago for the first time. I'd only ever gone to the churches that I worked at. Yep. My dad was a pastor, like literally all growing up my entire life. Yeah. I had not chosen the church I went to. It was, this is where you go because they provide you or somebody in your family a paycheck. Right. How was that? Because I know from talking to you during that interim season that you were shopping at a lot of different churches.
Well, the funny thing was we were talking about a lot. We didn't actually go to very many because actually I was very resistant, which surprised me in some ways. I think I would have my system was on overload of all the things that needed to be processed. Sure. I would have just stayed safe and kept going to a Willow campus.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And I'm actually really grateful that Matt could not tolerate that. He's so, that's where I like to live in the gray. He's very black and white. Like our family needed black and white then to actually protect us a little bit. Cause he'd be like, how can you possibly want to go there? I'm like, I don't know. Cause it's like church and I know people. So I feel like I'm part of a clan still. And that is important to me. And he's like, I can't. I'm so triggered and I don't want to be that human. And so I would go and he wouldn't go. And then we're like, oh no, what is this doing to our kids? Yeah. So we actually then started really talking about, because then our kids were missing Willow. And we were like, I remember saying to Matt at one point in time, I would rather our kids see a dad who's authentically trying to figure out how he relates to Jesus than obediently going to church on Sunday.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't want our kids to see that. Yeah. And if that means that this is a little funky and messy right now, it's okay. Yeah. And so there was a lot of Sundays we just stayed home. And then Jeff Flickema, who is on staff here, he and Matt had met, I don't even know, at an MX team event or who knows, some production event eons ago. And so they were Instagram friends. And Matt had kept seeing Jeff post about his church. And he kept saying to me, we should check this church out. We should check this out. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I was so resistant. So we were just stuck. And then finally I was like, okay, fine. But here's the deal. Because there was another church we were looking at, but we had heard that there were a lot of previous Willow people there. And I didn't want to walk into somewhere and someone go, oh, you're here because you're pissed too? Because I wasn't pissed. Yeah. And that's not what I was looking for, but we did need a fresh start. And so I said, okay, well, if we're going to go, we need to go for 4 weeks in a row so we can experience the life of this church a little bit. Yeah. And so we went the first time and it's we're celebrating our 5th anniversary as a church. They're so we've been there for 2 years now. They're set up tear down. They meet, it's Hope Culture Church. Shout out to Hope Culture. They meet in the Elgin City Center.
Such a cool little space.
I mean, and there maybe 100 people are there on the weekends, which is I mean, we're coming from Willow. Yeah. And thinking and you kind of this is the way church ministry happened. Yeah. And we sat through it and it was fine. And our oldest sat with us. She didn't want to go into kids' church, which is, we've also learned as long as our kids are there, we don't care where they sit.
Yep, sure.
Just be there. Yeah. And you don't get to scream when you're in big church with us. And afterwards we're driving home. It's a bit of a drive for us. It's 25 minutes. And we are in the kitchen and I'm like, so what did you think? And he's like, I mean, it was good. I was like, I kind of liked it. And he's like, yeah, me too. I was like, okay. It's small. And he's like, I know, it's kind of great, right? I'm like, yeah. And so we went the next week and we went the next week. And it helped know Jeff and have a friendly face. And there were a couple other people that we recognized that didn't make it weird that we had known them from our previous church life. Yep. And the pastors there, Dan and Abigail Dominguez, they're our age. They've got 3 kids that are about our age.
They're so nice.
They invited us over for dinner, which again was the pastors are inviting us over for dinner. What's happening here? Yeah. But I remember saying to Matt, I said, because we had people that we would meet, we didn't tell them we used to be in ministry. I was I actually told him one day, I go, nobody even knows if we're Christian.
That's awesome.
Like nobody even knows if we love Jesus yet. Because like it was even like we were totally deconstructing our faith, but like I didn't want to just raise my hands and worship because it's what I was supposed to do. Like we were really trying to figure out like, how do I relate to God? What role does church play in our individual lives, the lives of our kids and our family? Because we knew like saying yes to a church 25 minutes away changes how we relate to this church body. It's not like quote unquote in our community. So are we okay with that? Is that something we're willing to sign up for a while? And I told Matt before we went over to Dan and Abigail's for dinner, I said, if we're not going to show up and be honest about our story, we're not going. Because I'm not willing to show up and skirt around it. And he was like, okay, yeah, let's go. And so we just told him, we're nervous. We don't want to be treated differently. We need to sit and rest a while. We said, I said, Matt goes, I don't know if I'm ever going to volunteer. And I said, I think I'm going to probably wait at least a year. And it's been 2 years. I'm going to volunteer for the very first time on September 22nd.
That's amazing.
Big step.
It's a very large step.
And so Jeff's helps with production there. And I told him, I said, I have no idea what's going to trigger in my body waking up early to get to church to do service again. Yeah. So I'm tiptoeing back into this. And it's not that I'm doing live events all the time.
Yep.
I'm coaching people doing weekend services. So it's funny, even when you're like, do you want to come be on our podcast? I'm like, Sunday's coming, except not for Aubrey because she doesn't do this anymore.
Well, it comes just in a much more relaxed environment.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we're like the litmus test for me is if anything feels like you should do this, don't. Even if I should read my Bible this morning. Because for me, should is a voice of guilt and shame. And God actually doesn't communicate to us in guilt and shame. The evil one does.
That's so good.
So actually then you think about like, if I should go to church. I'm like, is Satan convincing you to go to church this morning? Like, what?
Interesting.
So maybe and then I don't just like give up. I pause and go, God, what are you actually inviting me to? How are you actually inviting me to connect with you right now?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just listen to some music, or I have an app that I love on my phone called Pray As You Go. And it's like total like monastic. It's beautiful. It's like
awesome.
Total different church tradition. I don't always believe everything they say on there, but to filter that, I do Bible study fellowship. It's like a women's Bible study. And I'm not normally like a dive into large groups of women kind of person. That's not really my scene. But the Bible study is great. So, but I don't feel like, I should do that. I'm like, I don't want to do that. So some mornings I don't read my Bible.
Yeah.
Because it's only because I should. And so I'll tell leaders, I go, don't should yourself. Just don't.
That's so great. Because it is, even when we left 2 years ago, there was a lot of guilt of sleeping in on a Sunday morning. And I wanted to do it so badly. And we still do it every once in a while.
Yeah.
But there was this guilt of like, this is what you're supposed to do, or my children are going to turn into criminals if they don't go to church on a Sunday for 8 Sundays a year.
Yeah.
Or whatever that looks like. And I think, kids is a whole other topic of that, of just going like, realizing, hey, was I using my church that I was on staff at to spiritually mentor my children?
Snap.
And realize once we were not there, I'm like, wait.
Oh, it's on me.
It's on me. Oops. And I was relying on that. We were both and didn't realize that. And just going, oh gosh.
Yeah.
That made us worse as spiritual mentors and parents, because we were relying on the children's ministry pastor to do the things that I was supposed to do before bed and do all of those things. And my simple little 30-second prayer, with my kids before they go to sleep isn't enough to
But also
them.
For me, like, even when you talk about like, is it okay for me to sleep in on a Sunday and like want to do that? Because we recruited the people to come be on our teams. We preached the gospel of volunteering. Like we did all those things, and volunteering is good.
Yeah.
What I appreciate, like when I hear, like what I appreciated and what I needed, God knew I needed this from the church I was in, is the way volunteering is talked about. I was like, hey, when you're ready for a next step, great.
Yeah.
And I never felt any pressure at all to like get in the game, realizing that I'm sitting there as an overqualified human.
Yeah.
To solve some problems I was even seeing. And there were even times where I sat there, I was like, God, could you just help me not to see that? That's not good.
Yeah.
Like, just help me not see it. And then that's when I was like, I'm not ready to volunteer. Because if I want to just get in there and fix it, like, I'm not going to do that to this church. I care too much about this community to bleed my bad habits on it. My bad habits of distorted perfection. And so I was like, that's got to get all like cleaned out of me. And so it was just a couple months ago where I started to sense God saying, I'm not going to have you unsee it, but maybe that's the gift that you bring. And I was like, oh, that's a different thought.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm ready to volunteer.
Yeah.
We'll see. September 22nd could be. I don't know when you're playing this episode of the
great.
podcast, but I'm like, it could be awful. And I'll be like, never mind. I'm not ready.
Hey, and you know what? If that's the case, that's okay too.
It totally is.
You know, that's okay too. I think that whole story and sort of your process is so validating and freeing to people that are listening to this, and they either are in a ministry role but unsure about it, or they've recently left, or they've switched it, or all of these different things lead to so many moments of, like you were talking about earlier, questioning identity. What does it look like for me to do what I'm supposed to do versus what I think is healthy for me or good for my family or whatever. And so, like, your story had a very unique set of circumstances. Every story of everyone listening has a unique set of circumstances. But to have the freedom to be like, okay, like, I don't have to just grind ahead at this. I can sort of evaluate and take a step back and think about, you know, is my season here changing? Does my role need to change? That may not even mean leaving the church that they're at. It might just mean talking with their team or their leadership about like reshaping things a little bit. And, you know, that's all great, but don't just like not think about it. And like let it happen to you without kind of processing and thinking about like what's happening inside of you and in your family and all that.
And I think like it's all you talking about that. That's what I'm so passionate about, is helping people identify that for themselves and then giving them the leadership tools to advocate for that for themselves. I think for so long, I just recently identified this. For the 18 years of ministry, it was always like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But please don't volunteer yourself to do something. Please don't advocate for you to move into a place of influence. And I was like, this does not like jive. Somebody help me figure out how to like reconcile these two messages. And that never really happened. So now I'm like super passionate about helping women in leadership navigate that, but just humans in leadership navigate that. Even if it's like, hey, I've got a day full of meetings. My last one's going to be really hard. I'm like, can you tell them you're going to be 5 minutes late? I'm like, because he's like, why? I'm like, because you probably need to go outside and take a walk for a second. Oh, can I do that? Yes.
You sure can.
You can. And then the trust pieces. And if someone's going to get mad because you needed a minute to get your brain right for a meeting, you probably shouldn't be on staff there anymore. And trust that God doesn't want that for you either. And he'll have something else. But that feels scary and risky. Matt and I both left Willow not knowing what was next. And where God has us now, we're both regularly in awe of.
And that's what he wants us to be, to finally be in awe of him doing miraculous things in our lives and coming through and being the provider that he says he is. And when our head is down and we're saying yes to our job that is God and doing everything that he wants us to do.
That's a very important way that you said that. Our job that is God, or maybe more specifically, our job that we have made our God.
And that's all we want to do. We don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting with the executive pastor. I'm not going to tell him I need 5 extra minutes to walk in a meeting. In this weird sense of, I don't know, it's not power. It's, I don't know what it is, but I think
it is a type of power dynamic. But when you think about it, if you're the leader and someone's going to come to a meeting with you, and if they communicated to you ahead of time, hey, and I told him, I said, don't do it last minute. That's your 4:30 meeting and it's 9 o'clock right now. I said, take a pause right now. Send the email right now. Hey, I have a full day of meetings. I want to bring my very best to our meeting. I need 5 extra minutes before I come so I can take a lap and clear my brain. What leader is going to say, please don't do that. Please don't bring your best self to my meeting. Of course, they're going to be like, sure, take 5 minutes. Now, if it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, okay. Like, so figure, and maybe it's not a lap around the building. Maybe you need to play a game on your phone for it. Whatever the brain clearing thing is for you, be diligent to figure that out for you personally, but advocate for that. No leader is going to be like, oh, please don't bring your best self. I hate when you do that. No.
Well, that's just kind of like, I think encapsulates the idea that you've kind of been expressing this whole time is, again, it's like, don't let it happen to you. Like, don't just let it happen to you without evaluating like what it is, why it's happening, and what would make it better. Like, maybe you actually need to cancel the entire meeting before that meeting and say, oh, we're gonna do that tomorrow.
Right.
Like, people do have more agency in their scenarios than sometimes either they or the people around them allow to be.
Yeah. And the younger the leader you are, or the younger to the organization. So like if you're brand new to an organization or you're a younger leader, the harder it is to do that.
Of course.
Because like you got the job because you kind of sold yourself.
Yep.
That's been one really interesting thing, like doing that. I just turned 40 this year. Like doing all this as a 40-year-old, there's a part of you that's like, I am crazy.
Yeah.
This is not the time to reinvent oneself. This is not the time to start something new. Like I had envisioned like, oh my gosh, I'm like, so like well established in my career, like exactly as culture prescribes it should be. And here I am like starting brand new, trying to figure out like, I don't know, what do I like? What do I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah.
The beauty of doing it at 40 years old is I do actually really know who I am. And there's so many times now where like I'll talk to a production company, because how everyone defines producer is so nuanced too. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you the kind of producer I am. And let me know if that sounds good to you. And there have been doors I've knocked on or conversations that have been had. I'm always up for a conversation. But sometimes we talk and it's like, that actually doesn't fit me.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit me. I'm not your person.
Yeah.
Or like a client that I just ended a contract with. I said, hey, this has grown and morphed in such a way that like, I think you need a project administrator. That is not me.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at it, which means you're not getting the best work. So you could find someone who does it better. And also, I don't want to spend my time doing that.
Yeah.
Like if I'm spending time away from my kids, it better be freaking good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I think the difference is if I would have tried to do this at like 25 or even 30, I would have been signing up for all kinds of stuff I didn't really want to do.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, this is who I am. And not in an arrogant way, but like, hey, let me make sure you know so we don't get into a situation where the work's not quality and I'm unhappy. Like, who wants that? No, let's not. But when you're 25, you're like, sure, I'll do whatever you say because I just want this job.
And also, you were just talking earlier about how like certain elements of the role, events and things like that just kind of like naturally flow out of you. That flow out of you with an ease that wouldn't have been the case at 25.
100%.
Right? So it's like, all that stuff, as you know, is kind of cliche. All that stuff is what allows you to even do the thing that you do now with any kind of comfort and like ease with the products you have.
So good to be old.
And the people on the receiving end, the people
you hear
on the
that,
receiving
everyone?
end,
It's good to be old.
It's so good to be old.
It is. Well,
it has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Let's not get into that rabbit hole.
No. I was saying like the receiving end of those production companies or whoever that is, you're like, hey, that's not my gift.
Yeah.
Like you're giving a gift to them by saying that up front and not BSing your way through the conversation to go, I'm your person. I'm going to do all of it. I'm going to crush it. In reality, you're not, or you're going to, not meet the said or unsaid expectations of what they have for you.
Right.
And they appreciate that way more.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, okay, well, then let's hire this.
And maybe I'll
just
call
that lane.
Aubrey again for a different project.
Totally. And to be clear, it's still scary sometimes to do that. Like I'm not willing to get myself into the bad situation. So like my dislike of that is great enough to cause me to still overcome the fear.
Yeah.
But even like I have a brand new client I'm trying to build a relationship with, and there is an event they want to do in New York City. And like having lived there, I'm like, oh my gosh. Really, God? Like, holy cow, this would be amazing. But the word they used was, we heard you're an event planner. And I'm like, uh-oh. I know some awesome event planners that are great about making sure the name tags and they're project I will call them project administrators. That is not me. And so I had to I said, let's talk about like what the scope of the job is, of the event. Like, what are you specifically looking for help with? And then I put in my email, if you need, I said, I just want to be upfront. If it's help with like organizing catering, which is a very important detail, that's not my forte.
Yep.
And I'm like, I might lose this job.
Yeah.
Which blows.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to travel away from my family for a weekend to do that.
Yes. Yes.
When I'm not good, and I'll probably mess it up. I can't tell you how many times I've been in charge of like getting food on set and totally screwed it up.
Yes. Well, it's
like everyone will be hungry if I'm in charge of that.
It just goes back to telling people the truth about who you are, and being okay with being like, this is who I am. And this is like my identity. My identity is so strong in myself and knowing who I am, which takes a long time. And I sure haven't figured that out all the way
it's
either.
so funny. Like literally every conversation we have on this podcast comes back to this idea of humility, where you're able to say, hey, here are the things that I'm not good at and I don't know. And at the same time say, here are the things that I actually am really good at. And I'm okay being honest about that.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to put that out there and then be able to contribute in these different scenarios in the way that I can. And I'm okay when I can't contribute.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take it as some big personal attack if you tell me I'm not the right person.
Right.
That comes up probably in every podcast in some way.
Not just the power of that for you personally, but if teams could actually show up with each other that way, and I'm not trying, this is not a shameless plug, but like, that's what I love about Working Genius, about being a Working Genius facilitator, is when because Working Genius is about like, you have two things that you fill your cup. It's not that you're good at. You could be good at all of it.
Yeah.
These are the things that energize me, that I like to do, which feels selfish and self-centered. But you do them faster. You're more innovative when you do them. You do them more effectively because they energize you. Then you have two types of work that are your working frustrations. They drain the snot out of you.
Yeah.
You get cranky when you do them. You procrastinate them. You don't do them well. Like you don't feel innovative or creative. Why would any company or any team want someone on their team regularly doing that kind of work? But that happens all the time.
All the time.
What if you could get around a table and go, wait a minute. So tenacity is one of my working frustrations, which is like the details, like checklist people.
Yeah.
I can do it. I can fill out Planning Center. I value what it produces. It is draining for me. I need to do something else after that because I'm just like, ugh. When I partner with someone else, there's a Kristen Skrzymski, shout out to Kristen on this. She has the Working Genius of tenacity. So when we partner up to work on Philo cohorts, it's magic. It was very humiliating at first for me to admit that like I suck at Asana.
Yeah.
Suck. I hate Asana. I don't like that it pings me every time. So I told Kristen, I was like, okay, Asana and I are not friends. It's the tenacity thing. If there's something that's on Asana that you want me to do, will you just like ping me in Slack or something? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I'll add that to my Asana task list. Like she thinks it's awesome. And so, but like there was a humbling in me to say, I'm not good at this. And just because I'm a 40-year-old leader with 18 years of ministry experience doesn't mean I need to magically either become good at it or pretend that I am. I'm not good at it. And I don't wield that as bad power either, where I say, well, I'm just not good at that. So.
Yes. Right. Yeah, because it can come across
take all my work.
That's not what it is. Yeah. It's saying, could you partner with me in this? Because then there are other things where I bring what I'm really good at to the table. And again, when a team can sit down and do that together, it's fire. It's magic. Yeah.
Because I think we were all taught in our 20s, early on in our career, that you have to be the Swiss Army knife who's, especially, for us who were in production.
Oh my gosh.
You have to be the Swiss Army knife and amazing at video, amazing audio, amazing at leading and producing. Also, make sure you're a great pastor and all the stuff. And just like you said, we sold ourselves. My first job that I got, I completely lied on my resume that I knew all of this. I don't know.
You're like, I'll watch the
YouTube
tutorials.
It was proficiency in Microsoft Excel.
I think it was Jan's Vista.
Well,
Jan's Vista. And I said I was good. And my new boss, I remember they were like, I'm so glad that you know Jan's. I need you to go program nights for the weekend.
That is not something you just jump into.
And I called my buddy, it was Frank Chabelle. Shout out to Frank. I was like, Frank, I need your help programming because I've never done this console before. And it's so dumb. And it wasn't that hard, but it was me overselling myself because I wanted to show my new employer that I could be everything they ever wanted me to be. Not what I'm good at, not my skills and gifts. It was, I will do whatever I have to do to get a job. And I did that and turned out it worked okay. And that's great.
And you learned how to program on the Vista.
And I learned how to do it. But we're so ingrained to just try to be everything and be good at absolutely everything. I think as I've gotten older, as we've gotten older, we realize this is who you get, man. Like, this is me. Here are the things that I'm good at. Yeah. Here's the things I suck at.
Right.
if we can meet somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
and you like the idea of these things that I'm good at on your
Yes.
organization or in your organization,
Yes.
then I would be a great fit. And if I'm not, then let's walk away and shake hands, go have a beer, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. And you're a key word of humility being the leading thing in that, not arrogance. Because I've seen leaders our age or older do it with arrogance.
Yeah.
That's what I'm good at.
Right. Take it or leave it.
And it's like, it's not that.
Yeah.
But it does take a certain amount of a healthy relationship to your ego to actually stand in the things you are good at.
Yeah.
Because even like with this new kid, I'm like, oh no, they're going to find out I'm a fraud. Like I'm not. And again, love my husband. He's like, what are you talking about? You freaking rock at live events. I'm like, I do. And he's like, yes. I'm like, I do. You're right. I do.
Yes.
To stand in like, I am worthy of billing this amount, or I am worthy of offering my services in this thing because I am good at it, not out of arrogance, but out of like, this is the gift I have to offer to these teams.
Yeah.
I do this in my sleep. Like I ask questions and people will be like, how do you know how to ask all those questions? I'm like, doesn't everybody think like this?
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody ask questions like this? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I guess that's something unique I bring to the table and I should offer it up more often.
Yeah. Because then people can learn that from you early on and not take 20 more years to learn how to ask those questions.
Right.
And to go, oh, shoot, I didn't know that I should ask those things to my team or to my leadership or to show up and present myself in this way that I can help.
Right.
And it's not arrogance. It's coming out of humility.
My 5th grader came home yesterday and she goes, Mom, I don't like my teacher. I'm like, wow, you loved her yesterday. What happened? And she goes, I got yelled at, or I asked too many questions and and she doesn't always call on me. And I said, okay, 2 things. Oh, I love that you're asking a lot of questions. Stay curious, kiddo. There's nothing wrong with that. There will be times when whoever the leader is, and it's your teacher in this case, needs to make space for other people to ask questions too.
Yeah.
It doesn't make your questions bad.
Yeah.
Keep asking them. Keep thinking through that stuff. We have a rule in our house. We'll answer any question honestly, which has gotten us into some interesting discussions.
Yep.
And then we don't go any further. So like, you don't elaborate beyond what the ask is.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
Unless they ask another follow-up question, then we answer it. But it's like, I want to cultivate curious kids because that's why we get new things. That's how we get electricity and cameras. And I mean, it's innovation.
But how much of that is like adults needing to learn to be curious also?
Absolutely.
You know, like not being afraid or thinking that it's out of place or that it's going to be perceived wrong to ask questions.
Yeah.
And for leaders to be to creating places where questions are welcome.
Yep.
And even if you say, oh, we'll talk about that later, or whatever the response is, it's not a place where people feel afraid to ask.
Yeah.
It's a place where any question's welcome and we can respond in whatever the appropriate way is.
Yeah. So much of the coaching I do in it's giving people permission to get curious about themselves and then curious about the things they've assumed to be true about the space that they're in. I did a file thing on this. This is like an adaptation of something I heard Megan Marshman do about prayer. But I did this with one of my coaching clients and I said she was just having a really hard time. She was super stuck like in negative self-talk and like assumed constraints and all this stuff. And I go, okay, let's get an example. Like let's say your role on Sunday morning. Think about how you enter your role on Sunday morning and what are the internal things that you think about yourself, that you think and say about yourself. And I want you to write all those out.
Yeah.
Then like draw a line or flip the paper over. Now like your colleagues, your volunteers in that same situation, what are you assuming they think and say about you? And write all that out and get honest.
Yeah.
Then another piece of paper or whatever, same situation. What do you think God thinks and says about you? And then which one of those voices do you want to trust the most? And equip yourself with that when you go into situations when you know your negative self-talk is high. Like equip yourself with what God says is true about you. Yeah. I think we're like afraid if we do that, we're going to become arrogant, which is it's weird. Yeah. It's silly.
It's actually the opposite. Like arrogance is a defense mechanism of insecurity. And like, you have to like present yourself in this very powerful way. Whereas someone that is actually secure and centered doesn't have to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much. That's so good. I feel like I should go do that, right? Take 3 pieces of paper and write that because it's it's really hard when the self negativity or that talk happens in your head and going, am I I shouldn't be here, or they're gonna find out sometime that I'm not as good as what I presented myself as, or whatever that is. And I don't know why that happens even more in churches. I think I see that much more in churches than other organizations, but I know it happens outside of ministry as well. But I think the enemy, just like what we were talking about earlier, hits people who are in ministry even harder, and hits them in the areas of their personalities and how they think about themselves, and attacks that and just goes, you're not good enough to be in this position.
And I would say I used to think that, but actually now, because I remember like the first time like a series of really unfortunate things happened last year, and I looked at Matt and I was like, we're not even working at the church anymore. Like, hands off, Satan. We're not even doing that business anymore. And I was like, oh, wait, but we are trying to like authentically figure out how to follow Jesus better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Satan does not like
and
that.
The trick with the church role, though, is that those attacks are able to leverage things that are actually good in like a very sneaky way. Like we were talking about earlier around like, my job is so important, or like the church is relying on me, or I'm supposed to bring my best or whatever. And it's like those things sound really noble, but are able to kind of be twisted around into something really damaging in this sort of covert way that's actually almost harder to spot sometimes than when you're not in a ministry space.
Yeah. There was something, I want to say that one of our pastors said this during a sermon a couple weeks ago, but it was like, Satan's not trying to like take you out. He's just trying to distract you. And if the negative self-talk of yourself, or like what was really convicting to me was when I started writing down what I think other people say and think about me, I'm like, I think everybody thinks I'm an idiot, or I think everybody thinks I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's like actually not true. But when you function and lead out of that place, you don't lead in your best.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not, he didn't take me out of the game, but he sure as heck distracted me.
Well, you know what that makes me think of is just the importance for anyone that wields any level of leadership or influence to be speaking those words of like affirmation and encouragement to the people in their spheres of influence, because so many people are trying their very best to go through that exact process, and they're working hard. And like, how much easier is it when you have people around you encouraging you with like how they actually view you and the things that you're great at and how you're contributing, versus just having to kind of muscle that up in your own mind. Like, I think for leaders to keep that in mind of, what am I doing that's actually making it easier for these people to believe the true things about themselves?
But then also give them space to do that. Like, one of the things I'll say, like, my favorite thing to do is like help somebody realize their untapped potential and give them space to go for it. Like, even in ministry, that was so true about me. Like, I loved training up new volunteers into like bigger leadership roles. But there's a piece of you letting go of saying like, well, everybody think I'm shirking my responsibilities by having a volunteer do this instead. What if the volunteer doesn't do it exactly as it's supposed to? Like, all the things around that. And in now starting to coach some other leaders, realizing that there's this assumption that like, but I'm the leader, I'm supposed to do it all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, your job as a leader is not to know it all or do it all. It's to facilitate the space for other people.
Yeah.
Facilitate the space for the team. So actually, like, I was just in a meeting yesterday that I was leading, and someone called out like, well, what about blah, 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 blah. And I was like, in past, Aubrey would have gone, you better think of an answer really quick right now. You know, you don't really know. But instead I just went, I don't know. That's a great question. What do you guys think? I felt even like, I'm like, I feel so relaxed. I'm like, I don't know. It's not my job to know, actually. It is my job to get all of you talking about it. So let's talk about it. We had a great discussion.
That's so good.
Got to lead by asking questions. That's like,
for sure.
You don't have to have the answer. You just have to ask the question.
You do not have to have the answer.
But you do have to fight down that voice inside that says, because I don't have the answer, everybody thinks I shouldn't have this role.
Yeah.
Because I fought that voice for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it has been the leaders above me, like Todd and Chelsea specifically at Philo, I'll just call it out, like specifically saying to me, we want you to lead this. We want you to do this. We think you have what it takes. And I'm like, okay. But like allowing that to be the place of like, and I don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And it's so much more fun to lead.
It's fun to lead. And that's the difference is the thing that is really hard, that you were thrown in a position to lead everybody, now becomes exciting and you enjoy it for the first time.
And everyone else enjoys it a little bit more too.
Correct. Because you're not crazy and you're not,
because think about the time when you sat around a table and someone invited you to participate at a higher level. The leader invited you to share your voice and invited you. Like, you loved that. Now, as a leader, you get to be the person who does that for other people. I'm like, yes, I'm here for that. That sounds awesome.
To anybody listening, remember the first time somebody called you into that meeting that you didn't think you were supposed to be in.
Yeah.
And go, hey, what do you think, Kaleb, about this thing? And you're like, me? Why are you asking me? Like, I'm not even supposed to be in this room right now, but you're right. I can think back to a handful of different, scenarios where I go, that moment impacted me for a very long time in my career and my longevity in ministry, the directions that I went, the doors that opened up because of that is because I go, oh, they don't think I'm an idiot or that I shouldn't be in this job.
And I don't know what it's been like for you guys, like being older leaders now. Like, I tried to nonchalantly say, like, I'm a middle-aged, healthy woman. Like, I just realized I was like, I was saying it to like a 20-year-old. And I was like, I'm double your age. It's fine. It's fine. But like realizing, and Matt and I have had these moments so many times because there's like younger guys on his team. And he's like, I remember what it was like being first on staff or like young in my career and seeing the people above me that I like thought, oh my gosh, they have it all together. They know all this stuff. Like, they're such a great leader. He's like, we're their age now. We have their level of experience now and how we feel. And we're like, oh my gosh, they were just trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
The CEO of whatever your favorite big name company is, like, and some rooms, they're still just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good. Man, this everything here applies to people not just in ministry. Oh yeah. To if you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad or a grandparent or in ministry and a pastor or a tech guy, it doesn't really matter. There's so many applicable things to that and just like life wisdom that I'm going, man, I need to go like write some things down.
It's good. That's just like cool thing about hearing people's stories is because as you unpack them, and you take a second to kind of, in hindsight, look back at what you were learning. Like, there's so many things that I think are encouraging and challenging to anyone listening, no matter where they are. So thanks for
You're welcome.
sharing all of that.
I mean, even when I got your request, I was like, what am I going to talk about?
Everyone can talk for a lot longer than they think.
Correct.
That's usually what we find out on here, which is great.
Correct.
Which is awesome. But
you guys are very easy to
You've
talk
mentioned
to.
a couple times the Philo cohorts and the coaching that you do there.
Yeah.
Maybe tell people a little bit more about that. We have a lot of people that are in the creative and production space that are listening to this. So what do you do there? What is that like? And how do they find out more if they're interested?
So you can go to philo.org and click on the coaching drop down. All the information's there. We have one, if you're like, I don't know when this is coming out, but like, we have one last 101 level cohort coming out starting in October.
Okay.
There's still one spot left, although maybe there won't be by the time you hear this. And then we're getting ready here in September to announce our 2025 dates for cohorts. So we have 2 levels of cohorts. The 101 cohort is like our entry level community thing. It's what we've been doing. It's what like Todd started during COVID. Yeah. It's 6 weeks for 90 minutes, no more than 10 people. We meet on Zoom from all over the world, actually, in country. Like, we have people from India, a woman from one of our favorite, like, now Philo volunteers from Hong Kong.
That's awesome.
She hosts the chat from Hong Kong.
That's so
for
cool.
Philo. It's so good. She was in one of my first cohorts. There's that one. So we'll release all the dates for 2025. So if you're like, I can't do the spring, but I could do the fall, you can get registered right away. And then this year, we just launched a 201 level cohort. So that's for 8 weeks instead of 6, and it's a 2-hour chunk. Okay. And we use a different book curriculum, and we just kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive. There's like more homework, which might sound awful, but to me, it's like next level leadership development in that community space. That's only 8 people in those cohorts. So, and again, all that information, you have to do a 101 before you can do a 201. So it's like a graduation process. Yeah. And then coaching, we do service eval and coaching, or like customize. What it is you can go to the I'm interested thing on the website, fill it out. You get a complimentary 30-minute call with me to chat about what problem you're trying to solve, what's going on. And then you can sign up for coaching with I'm one of our coaches, and then Alex Sawyer, Wes Harris are 2 other coaches of ours. And we kind of suss out, like, based on what your problem you're trying to solve, each of us kind of have our area of focus that we're good in. Like, if you are like, I need someone to help me figure out how to do this with all my tech gear, it's not me. Alex is probably a way better coach for you.
If you need to learn how to program in Jan's Vista,
call me.
Maybe call.
Brand new
maybe
Philo
call
coach,
Alex. I'm gonna say call
probably
Alex.
Oh my gosh. So that's all philo.org. That's all on the website
awesome.
too. And it's been really fun to dive in to do some one-on-one coaching. You can do, and that you can do like 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and it's one a month. So 3 sessions, 6 or 12 sessions. It's an hour. You just hop on Zoom and it's like, hey,
awesome.
what are, like, you get one-on-one with a coach, like direct, like, tell me what problems you're trying to chase down. Those have, some of them have been like, let's solve this problem you're having with your volunteers. Let's talk about like team structure. But some of it's been like, you dig down and get to like, hey, what in you is stopping you right now? And it gets to that level, which is
that's so good.
Been really good.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for coming out and talking with us. It's been so good.
Yeah, super fun. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
Yeah. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.